Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 5 of the SPIMA Council podcast. My name is Madeline, and I'm now in my fourth year of the sport management program here at Brock, and I'm one of your co-hosts for the season once again. Joining me on the hosting side this year and new to the pod squad is Dylan. He's in his second year of the SPIMA program, and I'm going to throw it over to him now to introduce our first guest.
Yeah, welcome everybody. So today on the pod, we have Burton Lee. Burton Lee is the current director, game operations, and fan experience for the Professional Women's Hockey League, the PWHL, with a BA in kinesiology and phys ed from Wilfrid Laurier University and an MBA from Southern New Hampshire University. Burton has been able to gain a plethora of experience within the sport industry with sales, marketing, game operations, and so much more. We're happy to welcome Burton as the first guest of season 5 here on the SPIMA Council podcast. So, Burton, welcome.
Dylan, Maddy, what an honor to be the first guest of the season. And Maddy, I'll say I come from the junior hockey world. So anytime you get past the fifth year, it's a full cycle. So awesome to think that this is going through different generations of SPIMA alums. So congratulations on that. And I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you, for sure.
Welcome. We'll hop right into the questions here. First off, can you tell us a little bit more about your current role with the PWHL and your excitement about the inaugural season coming up in January?
Yeah, great question, Dylan. The excitement is palpable. I mean, you see it in the media coverage, you see it with the fan base. The PWHL is all about our players. And when you think about the historical context of women's hockey and I think like hockey in general, we're a sport about grinding, right? We want people to work hard, pull up their sleeves and get after it. And no one embodies that more than women who play hockey and have been trying for decades now to get a viable league going. A bunch of different iterations, but all of it's culminating, I think, in something that's really exciting with the PW right now, with PWHL. And we're, I don't want to put words directly in people's mouths, but folks like Gary Bettman calling us crazy for trying to get this thing going in a couple of months. There is a real sense in the industry that this is a pretty audacious project to launch a league of this stature and of this importance on such a short period of time. You know, we're recording this in October and we're going to be playing games in January. But to my point about players, that's what this is about. We've got these athletes who deserve to be put on a world-class professional platform, and with great partners like the NHL ready to lend a hand, with great partners like we saw at our PWHL draft a few weeks ago, unprecedented broadcast and streaming coverage of that event that was put together in a very short period of time. It's really exciting. So the first part of your question around my role, that's one of the exciting parts is we're to use the overused now expression. We are building this plane as we fly it. And technically my role is a unique one. As you say, director of game operations and fan experience. I'm in the hockey operations department. So extremely blessed to be able to work under Jana Hefford's leadership. What an incredible leader she is, and a good team we have on the hockey ops side of inspiring people. But my experience is all in the business operations side of sport. And my role itself, I think if you looked at the job description, you would think this is really more of a business facing role. So it's great because I get to bring the fans' voice and perhaps a more traditional sport business perspective into the conversations around how we're going to build and grow this league. And we're at a point right now where we're basically trying to define what is it that we want this league to look like and be for the fans, for the players, for the corporate partners, for the broader population. And we could do that in a silo and take all the traditions of hockey and pop them into women's hockey and let it be exactly what you'd expect it to be. Or we could try and broaden that horizon a little bit more and make this game something that's really unique and special and is befitting of the athletes that we have and the fans that have been committed to this game for so long. So that's, I think, in a nutshell, my job is to try and help us guide the league to become something that the players and the fans deserve it to be.
Oh yeah, I think it's gonna be, like super exciting. I've already like signed up for the emails. I've sent my dad the emails and said, "Hey dad, do you want to put down $50 to get our tickets when they first come out?" Like, I'm super excited, and I think that the point that you said there where like the players deserve this, and like they grew up not really having this opportunity. Is like for example, Erin Ambrose is from my hometown, so to hear her interview after, for them to say like, what do you want to say to all of the like the young girls in Keswick, Ontario, who are looking up to you today. Even as someone who didn't play hockey and just grew up going to the arena and going to support other teams, I found that like super powerful. That somebody from, like there's some NHLers from Keswick as well, but especially now somebody who is from women's sports and women's hockey is now getting that opportunity. I think it's like so amazing and so cool, to be able to like kind of have that affiliation for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
no, it is incredible. And Maddie, sorry to cut you off. I think that what we saw that day and the feedback that we're getting, and we were lucky to work with you actually as part of that event. The feedback that we've gotten, not just from the players and their families, but from those people that maybe aren't just young girls players or parents of those players, but just community members more broadly of saying like, hey, you guys are doing something different. It's really exciting and it's inspiring. And I want to be careful. Like, we aren't just marketing this to the 9-year-old girls hockey players. I think that's the trope that everyone sort of feels comfortable living in of, yeah, this is great because all the little girls need something to aspire to. If I can dive into an anecdote for you, I've worked in Peterborough with the Peterborough Petes, so storied junior hockey team on the men's side of the game. And very traditional market, very old market. Peterborough, I think, is the oldest demographic by age in Canada. So you can picture it like old white dudes basically going to hockey games. And we were lucky to have the PWHPA, so one of the iterations before the PWHL, come and play a game in Peterborough. And we ended up running a school day game. So at 11 in the morning on a Friday in the middle of winter. And it sold out really quickly. Tons of young people and teachers and parents wanted to come out to the game, and we all said, "Yeah, it's gonna be great. All the young girls will be here cheering. It's a really cool opportunity for them." The stands were half and half, boys and girls, and I would say, and it was wild in the Memorial Center, so a little old arena in Peterborough. It was nuts, and the young boys, from grades 3 to 10, were as excited or more than some of the girls. And it was really eye-opening to see that it's not just about the little girls who are playing hockey in their local teams. It's about an entire generation of folks that maybe are looking for something on one hand a little bit different, on the other hand something that's expanded from what they're used to with sport. So yeah, very exciting. But carry on, sorry.
no, yeah, that's awesome, and that's a good segue, into our next question that we have for you here. Because as you just mentioned, you worked for the Peterborough Petes for about 10 years there in business operations and game operations. So can you expand on some of your experiences in this role and how you think it will help you in the new league? I mean, I saw that you posted the other day you had been to your first game fully as like a fan. So I bet you that was like such a different experience, after having worked for them for so long.
Yeah, I remember taking a film studies class during my undergrad, and the prof, it was a first year class elective, and the prof said, "You're going to take this class and you're never going to watch a movie the same way again." Because the expectation was you'd watch a movie and you'd have, I think her expectation was 30 to 35 pages of notes about that movie, all your analysis on it. And the same is true in sport, right? You're all SPEMA students would know this at this point, that you go to a game and you're not really watching the game anymore. Or if you're someone who's like laser focused on analytics or coaching or something, like the actual product on the ice, you're not seeing the entertainment side of it anymore. So I was really happy after having spent the past decade plus working at games, putting on events, doing all the behind the scenes stuff, putting out all the fires, that I was able to take my son who's 5 and get him a ludicrously big bag of popcorn and just like sit and watch. And really special too, for the non-junior hockey followers. The Pete's won an OHL championship last year, so I was able to play a part in that, and to watch the team raise our banners up to the rafters was really cool. But yeah, the experience of working in sport never really leaves. You always have one eye to it, but it was really special for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I can completely attest to what you're saying there about once you start studying sport and you're seeing everything behind it, once you go to a game, it's hard to look at it the same way like I did 5 or so years ago, just as seeing, the puck going back and forth. Now I'm looking at everything else as I'm trying to get into, something in the sport world. I'm looking at everything going not only on the ice, but the behind the scenes product, and looking at, oh, there's the scouts, there's the management, everything like that going on behind. So it's good that, you're able to finally experience the entertainment side again there. So I'm sure there was much interest for you for many leagues, as you have, that plethora of experience from everywhere. So what from the start made you want to go to the PWHL? What really drew you in there?
Yeah, great question. And I'll try and like merge Maddy's actual question before I went on a tangent there. Expanding on some of those experiences with the Petes. It was really for me the right time to make a career move. I think my last day with the Petes was basically 5 or 6 days after what would have been my 10-year anniversary with the team. So felt like a milestone for a lot of reasons. But working in junior hockey, you wear so many different hats, and it's such a great development opportunity for folks off the ice as much as it is for the players on the ice, because you're consistently short-staffed. There are never enough resources, whether it's money or time or people, to do all the stuff that you think you want to do, right? You're a follower of a pro team or a multinational corporation, and you see them doing all this good stuff, and you're like, we got to do it too. And you realize you have probably 100th of the staff that they have to pull it off, and the money is not even comparable. So with the Petes, we were able to pull off a lot of stuff that was really exciting and engaging, but and a lot of that had to do with our continued growth over the years. The Petes are a not-for-profit organization, so run by a volunteer board of directors, not a traditional multimillionaire or billionaire owner like you're used to. And so it's all community-based, and everything we were doing was about enhancing the community and the game of hockey, and obviously our performance on and off the ice. So the opportunity for me as a young professional to step into a leadership role with this brand that had a ton of equity, very storied team, lots of followers, and really apply my own ideas and initiative and hard work and blood, sweat, and tears to it was really, really special. And you obviously hear the stories of people, and you got all your listeners, and the two of you sit on panels and go to conferences and stuff, and you're always going to hear that, like, you work for a big org like MLSE, you're probably like maybe put in a bit more of a narrow lane, but you have access to more resources and career growth. You go to a small organization, you're going to wear a bunch of hats and learn a bunch of stuff. So that ladder was my experience, and a really great opportunity to try a bunch of stuff, fail at a bunch of things, but the consequences weren't too bad. And then shift focus to PWHL. I would say the timing was really perfect. Had a chance to work with Jaina and some of the leaders with PWHPA, had done a little bit of consulting with PHF and helping guide some of their work over the last couple of years in a really I would say like a low-key basis. And so I saw like this evolution of women's hockey over the last number of years, and it just felt like it was coming, right, in whatever way, shape, or form. So then to see all of that result in the PWHL now, with some major investment from Mark Walter Group and Billie Jean King Enterprises, and then see the type of people that were going to be affiliated with the PWHL, made it something that obviously was incredibly attractive. And for me, was extremely honored to jump on a call with Jaina Hefford and talk through the league and her vision for the hockey ops department and what she wanted to see. And it really felt aligned with where my head was at in terms of the game of hockey and what it needs to look like. So that was that. It was kind of the classic example of, at a certain point in your career, you're not necessarily like applying for and interviewing for jobs anymore. It's more of a, you start to identify your own values and expectations, and when something comes along, you kind of know it when you see it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know it's it's a new league, and people don't really know what to expect. So I can only imagine that you were kind of in the same shoes when you saw that opening as well. But I think you kind of now hold that responsibility for the fans, and especially in the role that you're in, is people really don't know what to expect, and that's kind of going to be something that you get to unfold over this season and the seasons to come, which is a super cool place to be in for sure.
Yeah, and you look at our owners, and then Stan, our board, a guy like Stan Kasten is president of the LA Dodgers and has been a professional sport president and general manager for longer than any of us have been alive. And he's such a dynamic individual, and he's smart enough to know, and he acknowledges this publicly, that we're going to make a bunch of mistakes in year one, and that's going to be part of the process of what we do. And obviously we don't want to make mistakes, and we want to make sure that we're as perfect as we can be. But I think what we're starting to hear a lot of is, let's not let perfect be the enemy of good, right? Like we can still do something really special here, even if it's not exactly like we want it to be 3, 5, 50, 700 years from now in terms of our league. So that's exciting. But yeah, Maddy, like that's the world that I came from, where if you wanted to do something, you went and did it in the world of amateur sport. And now the stakes are higher. We have a huge fan base. We have these incredible athletes that we're servicing, and I think there's a requirement, a necessity internally for us to make this as good as we can. But it's unique because the bar is a little bit lower, just because there's never been this type of investment. Like, all the stars have never aligned like this with our sport. So the draft was a good example. I think we did a pretty good job in the draft. I think there's a bunch of stuff that could have been way better. And yet, you ask anybody about the PWHL's inaugural draft in September, and it was like earth-shatteringly awesome, which is good. And I think we're aiming for that sort of expectation for January and beyond, that we're gonna do things really, really well, but we're also gonna have a really strong eye on what we don't love as much, or what we could expand once we get staffed up for season 2, which would be in the fall of 2024.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I know I'm excited. I can't speak for everybody, but we like to have some fun on here too. We've talked a lot, about business and your past and current roles, but we like to have some fun and get to know you just as like a guy in the sports world too. So we're kind of getting a sense here that you're a big hockey fan. You've worked in hockey. So who are some of your favorite players, would you say, whether that doesn't have to be professionally, it could be, within the junior hockey stream, but who are some of your favorite players, maybe male and female?
Okay, so here's the thing. Not a huge hockey fan, to be totally honest. But I'll still answer your question.
Sure.
What, a lot of people look at me like, big white guy, grew up in rural Ontario, like working in hockey, probably played, right? My line is that I believe that I was the worst hockey player in Ontario. I got cut from a house league team, which I'm pretty sure, like, OMHA, you're not allowed to have happen, but it happened. That's okay. I went to play football and basketball, which is a little bit more my wheelhouse. But there's something about the game, right? It's so special. Like, anyone who's played the sport, and certainly the sport has some challenges, but I think, like, just the if you were able to, like, strip it all away and take it back to the pureness of, like, just the smell of ice, if that makes sense, like when you walk out for that 5 a.m. practice in your little, like, town's arena, like, there's just something about that. You can't capture that anywhere else. So I think I've fallen in love with hockey as a live entertainment piece, because of that, like, feeling of being in a rink is so different. And the other component of live is working in junior hockey in a market that I'm in. We had an interesting population where there's a lot of old folks. So, like, Margaret, the 82-year-old woman from Peterborough that's never left the city in her entire life, the Petes would score a goal, like some sweaty 16-year-old would put a piece of rubber in the net, and she'd give a high five to, Jazz Meat, who's the international student from Fleming College, who's 19 and at his first hockey game. And it's like, when would those worlds ever collide? So
Yeah.
that's my passion point for hockey. It's never been the play on the ice so much, or the players as personalities. It's really been more about the storytelling and I think the potential for our game to really have a positive, lasting impact on our communities. Once again, like I need to acknowledge the fact that like the sport of hockey has had some pretty serious allegations against it, and there's some absolutely, there's some cultural things that we've got to identify and fix. But if you can do that, this sport is really, really unique and special in terms of bringing people together, which is what I've always loved. So anyway, to answer your question, like growing up, I remember I went to an exhibition game of the Leafs with my dad one time, and he got me a Todd Warner jersey. So like Todd Warner is my favorite player in NHL history for sure. If you want me to do a throwback.
Yeah.
and on the women's game, I think it's Decker. She, just trying to think back, like it was the 2019 finals, playing with Calgary, and I just want that game was picked up by Sportsnet or something, and my son Louis had just been born, so like sitting on the couch, like holding him, he's sleeping, like watching that game. It was really probably like my first true taste of pro women's hockey and what it could be. And I'm like, holy crap, like she is tearing up the ice. And so that was a cool moment from a like player perspective.
Yeah, I'll let Dylan jump in here in a second,
Yeah.
but that's a really good point you made about, you work in hockey, so people assume that you're a hockey fan. But one of the biggest things that's like stuck with me, like personally about working in sport, is after, my first 1 or 2 years in the sport management program, is kind of some advice that your professors would give you, is that sometimes it's not in your best interest to work in your favorite sport, because it might take that enjoyment of the game and the experience away from you. So like personally, I grew up going to Leaf games with my dad and my family and my uncle. And I always thought like, yo, it'd be so cool to be like part of the blue crew and like do all the flags and throw out all the stuff. But then I said to my dad, like once I got older and I was in the SPIMA program, I said, I don't think I'd like that, because I don't want to be running around the stadium. I want to be in my seat watching the game. So that's kind of why most of my experiences so far are in sports that I don't have that much of an interest in necessarily to play, or I didn't have that much experience in them before I got there. But I just thought you brought up a really good point there that has stuck with me since I've been in the program.
Yeah, great point. I've got a question for the two of you, but I just wanted to say, like on that note, Maddie, that the thinking behind, it's so easy to live in the binary, like the black and white, right? Like if you're a fan, you should never work in sport, right? You've got some profs that probably try and like make it a real like hard statement. And I don't always buy that. Like it's the same as like every single one of you wants to be, the next GM of the Leafs. Like you're not going to be that. What is SPIMA and what is a university program if not, an opportunity for people to test and to explore, right? And the notion that like people want to have this hot take that like you can't be this or you shouldn't try to do this, like I find is ridiculous. Like that's why you're there, is to learn if you could or couldn't. So good on you for identifying like, I used to think that was cool, now I don't. That's always the advice I give when folks are coming into an internship or an entry-level role, is like try everything and like start ticking off what you don't want to do. And by the time you're in your 20s and 30s, you're going to have a pretty clear picture of who it is that you see yourself as a pro, and that's going to define, what you want to do. But I got to ask you both, like you talked about Keswick, Maddie, like where are you both from? And can you tell me, just as I completely hijack your interview here, what's your favorite or most lasting hockey memory in terms of watching the sport?
Okay, so I'm from Ottawa, so I grew up a huge Sens fan. I really never left the city much until I came here to Brock. But definitely my favorite hockey memory growing up was back in 2017 when the Sens were actually good. when they were in the playoffs. It was Dion Phaneuf's overtime winner in the playoffs against the Bruins in game 2. I was there live, and I've never felt something so just like moving. Like, it was so loud. It was 20,000 people screaming at the top of their lungs. Like, I've been to a lot of sporting events. I've been to like CFL games, NHL games, MLB games, but there's nothing quite like a playoff win that's really just put me out of my seat. It was ridiculous. A sea of red. It was just a great atmosphere to be in. Not like, obviously I was happy that they won, but it was just more of like looking around, just like what you said before, using like sport as a connector and just seeing everyone just kind of unionize together, everyone cheering for the same outcome, no matter, their gender, their skin color, anything like that. Everyone was just going and cheering together for one final outcome.
Yeah, I'm gonna hop on that train too. I have two answers, but one, I remember I said to my dad, um, you know, I want to go down to Maple Leaf Square and stand in the square. I was in high school, let's say. I said, I want to go stand in the square. Will you come with me? And like, I just want to be part of that crazy fan base that stands outside. So we get there like 2 hours early. We're doing all the activations outside. My dad's like getting the back of his head shaved with like a maple leaf, and they're spray painting it. Like, we're doing all the stuff. And we're spinning this wheel, and every so often the lady puts in a free pair of tickets up into like the Ford fan deck. So it was my turn to go up. She put in the free pair of tickets, and I looked at my dad like, oh my gosh, what if this happens? So I spin the wheel, it lands on the tickets. We went into the game, and the Leafs won that to make it to force a game 7. And same like Dylan, I don't think I've ever seen Scotiabank Arena so excited and so loud. Like, I have videos, they're terrible videos. I was screaming at the top of my lungs. My dad's like crying next to me. It was like unreal. Those playoff games, you can't get anything better than that. But one other thing I was gonna say is, growing up in Keswick, it's like super small rural town. I grew up going to not so good junior C hockey games with my dad growing up, just because it was something to do on a Friday night. It gave my mom some 2 hours of peace and quiet, and my dad and I went to the hockey game. And it was kind of just like, I really enjoyed those, just being able to spend time with my dad and go to the game. Like I said, it wasn't very good, but we knew a lot of the people there. At one point, there weren't many fans. Like, I could have counted like 30 people there for a few years. Like, nobody came. But it was more just like that experience. And I got to go with my dad. And now, as a 21-year-old, I go home for the weekend and I go, Dad, you want to go to the game on Friday night? Just because it's changed so much. And like, kudos to that team, because they've really turned it into a big organization now. But just kind of growing up watching hockey in my hometown, it was so much fun to do. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for humoring me with your stories. It's always nice to hear why people that are future leaders in our industry are what drives their core memories around sport, or around hockey specifically. And I find like it's often not about what the score was or what the stats lines were, right? It's the moments that bring you together with somebody, whether it's 1-to-1 with a family member, or 1 to 20,000 with an entire fan base of people in an arena. So that's super cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll ask you the same thing. What is your most memorable sports experience, whether that be as a fan or even just as an employee?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you build a career in the industry, and there's so many. And I think like just taking it all like an entire step back, Dylan, is just the people that you get to meet, and community forums around the sport that you really cherished. So some phenomenal human beings that I've had a chance to work with. But in terms of moments, I think there's been a couple of really special ones. In my role in Peterborough, I think I just started as the leader of our business ops team, and I always felt like there was this growing disconnect that, as we're seeing now culturally with the sport of hockey, and like who has access to it. And wouldn't you want to create an environment where everybody can feel like they can come to a hockey game and feel the sense of pride and the sense of place that it offers so many folks? So I thought, well, okay, if hockey is Canada, then maybe we can marry those concepts up a little bit. So I organized the first ever Canadian citizenship ceremony to take place on ice as part of a pregame ceremony. And I'll give a shout out to a former colleague and friend, Shelby Collins, who did a lot of the operational work that day. But 42 people became Canadians on the ice at the Memorial Center just minutes before the puck was dropped between the Petes and the London Knights. And it just felt like we all of a sudden had like a purpose for that Thursday night home game. And despite the fact that we, the Hunter family with the Knights weren't so pleased that we delayed the start of the game by 25 minutes, like otherwise it was pretty incredible to see these folks. Like, I think as a group of the 42, like one or two had ever been to a game before, a hockey game at all. So it was cool for them. And I think what I loved even more, because other hockey teams have done citizenship events and not necessarily part of their game. We had a packed house. We had 4,000 people singing "O Canada" together with these people at center ice who had just become Canadians, and singing our national anthem was cool. And then the entire ceremony is pretty unique in terms of like saying an oath and having all these other people who many of whom were born Canadians and never left the country, to see the process of like welcoming that was really cool. So I think the Petes won that night. Don't remember. Not really fun, right? So yeah, those types of moments are really cool. But yeah, we're so lucky in this industry that we work in an environment that so many people are passionate about, that you kind of like by osmosis get everybody else's like amazing moments, and you get to kind of like hold them as your own as well.
Yeah,
I have to say, go ahead, Dylan.
I was gonna say, even just you showing that you think the Petes won, you don't really remember, just enforces that, the experience of not so much the on ice product, but just again, using sport as a connection. I think that's so great, just to bring everybody together and to, bring in new Canadians to the sport is really great.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, I've actually been to a Canadian citizenship ceremony too at the Canadian National Exhibition, and it is a really cool experience. I don't know if people can just like get in on that, but if you ever have the opportunity to be a part or witness a Canadian citizenship ceremony, it is like super emotional. And like I didn't think I was gonna be emotional. Like I am Canadian. I was just at the event, and it was like super, super cool to watch these people like come into our country and like be so proud, and especially for you, like you said, yeah, Burton, yours happened, or like the one that you were involved with happened at the rink. Like these people that I saw, that happened at like one of the oldest traditions in Canada, and like one of the biggest fairs. Like these happen at such cool spaces for these Canadians now, which is really cool. Um, but so we know the anticipation of many hockey fans to see like lots of players is starting to rise. All the players have teams now. Well, not all, but most of them have teams now. They still have a few spots to fill. There's players like Taylor Heisey, Poulin, Hillary Knight, just to name a few, obviously. But do you think there's any like dark horse players, maybe some that didn't get drafted, or some that did, that were not surprises, but maybe you didn't think were going to be so high in the draft, or any dark horses that you think will really turn heads this season?
Yeah, I'll leave the analysis to the analysts, but I think
Yeah.
that I think what I hear a lot of is not necessarily, Maddie, about individual players, but more so just their opportunity to be seen on a more consistent and thorough basis as athletes. So the players that maybe are, let's call them fourth liners on the Canadian or US national team, that now get to step in and be first and second liners on their team and play a full season. And you look at like Sarah Nurse and what she did in the past year on the national team level. It's like, obviously incredible athlete, incredible human being, like amazing. but never really like, because of the depth of our country's athletes, like didn't really like as a younger player, like didn't get that opportunity as much. And then like just, was able to shine. And I think we're going to see a lot of those types of stories where it was like, oh, this player was on like the bubble, so to speak, despite being the elitist of elite athlete. And when they get the minutes to munch in their league, then it's going to show. And that, I think, is going to drive our national teams forward. And I think it's going to drive the international game forward, because there's going to be spots for some of these international players to come over. And not to forget that there's also pro women's leagues around the world that are going to see a bit more exposure out of this, whether it's some of our players that don't make any of the PWHL teams going over there to continue the pro dream, or vice versa, right? Having Europeans come here and actually have some exposure for them, beyond just whether it's a PHF game or a Dream Gap game or a national team game. So that I think, like, as from a broad perspective, is what I'm really looking forward to, is who can emerge from this. Individually, like, the draft was so cool because you just started to see some of the personality of some of the players come through. And I look at Alina Mueller's interview with Anastasia Busis after she got drafted to Boston, and she breaks down crying. Like, this is like moments after she gets picked, and she walks across the stage and her family's back home, and it's like, this is meaningful. This is really meaningful. And I think that we're going to be treated to some incredible hockey, but also some incredible, like, personality growth and exposure off the ice too. So I'm pumped, but I don't think I would be allowed within the hockey ops department of a league to like really pick a dark horse or something like that. I think there's like a code of conduct I could probably sign it at some point.
For sure, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I mean, I won't ask you then, if there's any predictions yet for the season, then I guess you can't really.
Who's going to win, Dylan? You tell me.
Yeah, no, tell me just off the books. Yeah.
Yeah, wish I knew.
Yeah, I mean, hey, we'll see soon enough. I'm super excited for the season to get started. I don't know, Maddy, is there anything else you have to ask here?
No, I was just going to say, Burton, it was really, really nice of you to join us today and, give us some insight into your previous experience and with the PWHL too. So, I mean, normally we give you the floor to close it off, and we're going to keep doing that here in season 5. So we want to thank you on behalf of Dylan and I and, the SPEMA Council podcast here, but the floor is yours, and we thank you for joining us today and being our first guest.
What an honor, Maddy, Dylan. Thanks so much for having me on the podcast, and to the SPEMA Council. Keep up the great work. We didn't really dive into too much of the, like, what's your career advice type of question. So maybe I'll like wrap up just with as a segue. Like, I give so much credit to Brock students in sport management, because as a rule, it seems like you all really commit to your personal and professional development outside of the classroom. And so I applaud you for that. Continue doing that. It's good for myself as someone who's trying to hire people, and it's good for our industry as a whole, as we try and get better and better to provide our fans and our players and everyone in between some great opportunities. So yeah, really, really an honor to be part of the show. And it was good of you to like set the bar low in terms of guests for your first episode. So that's nice for the future ones, and I'll be watching. So go Badgers, go.
Thank you, Burton.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah.